In this video, we'll be creating this contact form using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So without further ado, let's get straight into the tutorial. So before we get into the tutorial, we do have some assets that you will need in order to follow this video. I have some GIFs that I created, one for the desktop view and also the mobile view. And then we also have some icons here for Instagram and Facebook. And finally, 3 blank files being the index.html, styles.css, and finally the app.js file. So let's get straight into it. First thing we want to do is to set up some basic syntax here, call it contact page. Once we've done that, we want to also link up the style sheet, come down to styles, save that, come over to the port over here and just click on that and it should load up here. Awesome, looks like it's working. And to start the video off, we will be working in the mobile template and then working into the desktop template towards the end. Okay, so the first thing we need is the nav bar. So we'll start off by creating a nav here, create an unordered list with a list item. Oh, there we go, copy this down, about projects and also contact, and set class to button so we can play with that towards the end. We also have in the mobile view a burger menu. So to work with that, we want to create a trigger for JavaScript so that it actually is triggered and changes it from a closed state to an open state. And we also want to create a burger menu like so. Perfect, so that's the nav setup. The next step is working on the section. So we'll come over to our section. First thing that we have is a title. So we'll put in a h1 tag with the class name of title, call it contact. The next thing we want to do is to create a form. So we'll just get rid of this. Inside that form, we want to have the contents themselves. And we'll have a p tag and call it name. So we go first and last name. And then we also want to have input with a placeholder which says this on the writing. Copy this, bring it down. Oh, wrong one. There we go. So email details. Please enter your email. And then also we want another one, but instead of doing input, we want a text area. So here we'll put inquiries like so. I'll just copy this across and put a text area. And we'll just remove all these default features that it's given us and give it a placeholder for please enter your inquiries. Awesome. And then finally, we have a button. We'll give it a class name for button, and then we just have send. Okay, let's see how it's looking so far. Fantastic. So now we have our nav bar and then also the contact section. The next step after that is working on the footer, which is underneath here. So after the section, we want to create a footer. So the first one we have is the logo itself, which is Patrick's Gardening Service. And then also we want another one called Terms and Conditions. Terms and Conditions. And finally, we have the icons themselves. And we'll just put in 2 images which we have under the icons section. The first one is Instagram, and just put in Instagram. Oh, and we'll put in one more as well. Call it Facebook. And let me just grab this and put in Facebook. All right, cool. So now that should be working. Yep, so we've got everything. So we have our nav, then we have our contact, and then finally we have our footer, which is here. Perfect. So once we've done all of that, we can start to style it. So in order to start styling, we'll come over to the styles.css file. But before that, we want to get access to the font family, which is this one here. This will all be provided in the GitHub repository, or you can go and get it yourself from Google Fonts if you wish. So we'll just copy this, and these are the ones that I've selected here. We'll come back into here, and with the styling sheet, set the body to have a margin of 0, the padding of 0, go into the index and paste that information in here. And then we can come back to here, and the font family here is located in that description there. And once we save it, hopefully all the typography is added. Awesome. That's looking really good. So once we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is work on the nav bar. So we'll go into nav. Just fix that up. Set the background color to this color here. Set the display to flex, line items to center, justify content to center. We also want to set the padding to 0 as well as the margin to 0, just so everything's nice and balanced. That's looking good. So the next thing we want to do is work on the unordered list. So with the unordered list, we want to set a display of flex, align item center, justify content to center. And we want to set the flex direction to column, just like that. And then I just realized I spelled about wrong. So we'll go back into here, fix that up. Okay, cool. Set the list style to none, as well as the text decoration to none. That's looking good. We also want to set the padding to 0 as well as the margin to 0, just so everything's nice and straight and aligned. That's looking really good. Now, what we want to do with the nav is, rather than building this first, I think it would be wiser to build what it would look like when it's open. So we'll start doing that now. So with that, we will set the height for the nav to be 100 vertical height. And for each item, we want to set the color to white and also give it a padding of 2 rem so that it's nicely spaced. And we also want to set the font size to 32 pixels. So, then set the text transform to capitalize. So now everything's nice and capitalized. That's looking really good. All right, so once we've done that, now we want to set it as if it were to be in its closed state, so we can start working on the burger menu up here. So in order to do that, let's go back to the height of the nav. Let's set it to, I don't know, let's say 5.5 rem. That looks quite nice. And we also want to set the display for the unordered list to none, as well as the visibility to hidden, so we can no longer see it. Great. The next thing we want to do is to work with the burger trigger. So let's start working on that. Set the position of this to absolute, content to nothing. And then we want the background color to be red so we can see clearly where it is. Set the height to 2 rem, width to 2 rem. Actually, no, we'll do 1.75 rem. I think 2 rem is probably slightly too much. Set the top to 2 rem. And from the right side, we also want to set the value to 2 rem. Fantastic. So that's where the trigger is, which is looking really good. So once we've got our trigger sorted, and I'll also add a Z index of, let's do 1 just to start off with, we can now start to work on the burger menu here. So with the burger menu, let's do position absolute, content set to nothing. Set the background color to, let's do white so we can see it clearly. Set the height and width to, well, the width to 1.75 rem, and then the height we want it to be a lot smaller, so it becomes the stroke of the burger. And Let's fix that up. So it appears, there it is, this little icon here, but we now want to push that to the right of where the burger trigger is. So we'll set the right to 2 rem, and then also set the Z index to 2. So it's overlapping that. All right, that's starting to look quite nice. The next thing we want to do is with the burger menu, we want to also add 2 additional strokes. So in order to do that, we'll copy it again, add 2 colons, and then type in after, or you can click that up there. Then we want to transform and translate that particular stroke by, let's say, I don't know, 0.5 rem, and get rid of the right side. There it is. So we've got our first stroke, then our second one is an after stroke. So that's starting to look quite nice. Copy this again, but change it to a before, and we want to go in the opposite direction, so a negative. That's looking good. At this stage, since the white strokes are within the boundaries of the trigger, this should work perfectly fine. And what we want to do now is change the Z index from 1 to 3 so that now the burger trigger is on top of the burger, so that when the user clicks on the burger trigger, it will change using JavaScript, but we'll get into that a bit later. So set the new background color to transparent so we can no longer see it. And there's this nice looking burger. And if we hover over it, it's the burger trigger as opposed to the burger menu. Awesome. That's starting to look really nice. So now that we've created the nav bar, the next step is to work on the section, which is this part here. And what I've done is I've changed this around so that the form contents contains the H1 tag. Before it was up here, but I've just put it back into here just so that everything works out the way that I want it to do. Okay, so let's get back into styles. Awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is for the section, set the height to 100 vertical height. We also want to set the background image to a URL of one of the GIFs that I created, being the mobile GIF. Set the background size to cover, background position to bottom center. That's looking good. Then the next thing we want to do is work with the form contents. So actually no, before that, work with the form. So go to form, set a padding of 2 rem, that everything is within this box here, which is exactly what we need. And then with the form contents, set the width to 100%. So now each item should be, or should contain a width of 100%, which it does. And that's starting to look really good. Awesome. So the next step is to change the H1 tag. So title, so text, transform, capitalize, set the color to white. And then we also want to create a font size for it. So come over to here. We have a font size of 40 pixels. So we'll put that into here. That's starting to look really nice. The next thing we want to do is work the P tags that I created here. So with the P tags, we want to set the text transform to capitalize. We want to set the color also to white. And we want to set the font size to this value here, which is 16 pixels. So we're putting 16 pixels. That's looking really good. And then we also want to play with the padding and the margin. So we'll just set both these to 0. Let's set, I don't know, let's do the top 2 rem, 0 for the right, 0.25 rem for the bottom, 0 for the left. That's starting to look quite good. Let's just have a look. Oh, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that, I think. I guess, yeah, with the title, I might set the padding to 0, just so, and the margin also to 0, just so it's closer. Yeah, that looks a lot better, much cleaner. All right, cool. So the next thing we want to do is work with the inputs. So the inputs themselves are these parts here. So let's go input, set the width to 100%. Set the padding to, let's do 1 rem, I guess. And since it's going off the screen, we want to create a calculation. So let's do 100% minus 2 rem. That should pull it back. Yep, that's pulling it back. We also want to set the background to transparent. A border of 1 pixel solid white. Set a border radius as well. Give it, I don't know, maybe 0.25 rem. That looks quite nice. And then we also need to work with the text area as well. Set the width to 100%. Then set the padding of the same thing, 1 rem. Create a calculation so that it goes back to where I want it to be. So 2 rem. That's looking really nice. And then that's starting to look quite nice. So background set to transparent. Set the border to 1 pixel solid and white as well. And same border radius as well. That's looking good. And we also want the font family. So this one here. And just paste it into here. That's starting to look good. Put it into here as well. As we type, that's looking really good. The only issue now is changing the color. So let's set this to white. And we also want to set the font size to, I believe it will be the same as this. So 16 pixels. Maybe 16 pixels. Let's copy this down into here. Whoop. Yeah, that's starting to look really nice. And then also we need to work with the placeholders. So at the moment, it's not doing exactly what we want it to. One last thing, set the color to white. Yeah, that looks good. And let's do the placeholder. So input, placeholder, set the color to white, text transform. Oh, not text transform, my bad. Font style to italic. Yeah. And we want to set, instead of white, I believe I used a dark gray. Yep. This one here. So just put this one in here. Now it should look like that. That's starting to look really nice. Copy this. Instead of input, just put in text area. Awesome. That's looking really, really clean. Fantastic. The next thing we want to do is the button. So if we come to the button, so button dot btn, set the width to 100%, set the padding, I don't know, to 1 rem, perhaps a 2 rem, maybe that's too big, 1 rem, set the background color to this color here, which is that. Go into it. Yep, that's looking good. Set the border to none, since we don't want a border. And we also want the same border radius as before. So this one just here. Copy that into it. And then one last thing, add a margin of 2 rem for the top and 0 for the rest. That's looking really nice. Actually, before I do anything else, let's capitalize it. Okay, that's actually starting to look quite nice. So now we have the nav bar created as well as the section for the mobile. The next step is to work on the footer. So if we scroll down to the footer, let's set the background color to whatever the nav bar was. So if I scroll up here, this color here. Yep. And then we want to set display of flex, align items to center, justify content to center, so everything's centered. Set the flex direction to column. Awesome. Set a padding of, actually no, we'll do that in a bit. Actually no, set a, no, we'll leave it. That's okay. Let's go over to here. So p.logo. So now we're setting the 2 rem perhaps. For the top and bottom, 0 for the left and right. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks quite nice. P.terms, terms and conditions. So, Let me fix that up. Padding, let's do 0 for the top, 0 for the right, 2 rem for the bottom, 0 again. That's starting to look quite nice. I still think we could probably have more, so maybe 3, and then the icons themselves. Let's do 0 for the top, right, 3 rem for the bottom, 0. Now it's nice and balanced. Okay, that's actually starting to look really good. So now we have a static website which contains the nav bar, the section, and then also the footer. The next step is we want to start adding some functionality to the website. So if I exit out of here, just drag this into here. What I want to do now is to start making it have some pretty cool animations. So let's start off with the button. So with the button, let's set a cursor of pointer, save that. So now it starts to look like that. So if we go button and set a transition of 0.25 seconds, actually we'll do 0.25 seconds should do the job for all. And then button.btn :hover. And we want to transform scale by, I don't know, 1.025. How that looks. That looks nice. So this little animation works here. I really like that. Another thing that we can add is the icons themselves. We could probably make them a bit more interesting. So I just realized they're not aligned, so we'll quickly do that 9. Line items to center, justify content to center. Now that should be centered, yep. And then for each item, so if we come into here, give it a class of Instagram and also a class of Facebook for the HTML. Also fix that up. It's there. Got Facebook. Transition 0.25 seconds all. Copy this. Hover. Copy the exact same thing. Actually, before we do that, transform, scale it by 1.025. Now we've got this nice looking thing. Perhaps we can make the scale that slightly larger, maybe 1.1. That looks nice. Set the cursor to pointer. That looks really good. Copy all of this. Do it for Instagram as well. Now Instagram has a cursor, and also when we hover it, we want it to do the same stuff. Cool, that's looking really nice. So now we have a basic hover for the button as well as the icons down here. That's starting to look really, really nice. One last thing, I might also add in a padding. Let's do 0.25 rem, 0. Actually might do 5. And then also for Facebook, we'll copy this and do it on the opposite side. So now it's more spaced out and a lot cleaner. Fantastic. Once we've done that, the next thing we will also want to do is to work on the functionality of the burger menu. So we come over to our burger menu. With the burger trigger, we also want to add a pointer, so the user knows that this can be clicked on. So what we can start to do now is go into our app.js file. But before we do that, you want to come into your index.html and under body, create a script tag. And inside that script tag, link it to your app.js just so that it works the way that we want it to. Let's just open this up a bit. And we'll also open this up. Looking good. And we'll just console log test just to make sure that's working. It's working. Fantastic. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is create a constant for the burger trigger. And we want to equal this to document.query selector, and it should be called div.burger trigger. So put in div.burger trigger. Oh. Now, before I do anything, I'm just going to quickly fix this up to word wrap just so you guys can read it better. All right, there we go. So that's the first one. The next one is the burger menu. So change this to burger menu. All right, cool. That's looking good. Now let's log these out. So let's see that that's working. Yeah, so we got the burger trigger, and then let's see if we have the burger menu as well. I'll just get rid of this. Yeah, that should be it. All right, cool. So it seems that we have our constants for the burger trigger itself. So let's add an event listener of clicking the item. So let's go into burger trigger. So you can copy this, .add event listener, and call it click. Create an arrow function. And within that arrow function, let's say click, just to make sure that it's working. Come over to your console, click on here. And if we click on it, there we go. A click comes up. Perfect. Now what we want to do is as we click it, we want to toggle a class list of active into the burger menu so that we can transform the way it looks. So what we can do now is go burger menu.classlist.toggle, put in active like so, that now if we were to click on the burger menu here, if we look at the burger trigger, the burger menu itself, if I click on the burger trigger, it will toggle this active class list. And that's where we can start to play around and add in new features to make it interactive. So the way that we can do this now is come down to burger menu, and we want to add a new one called active. And inside that active class that we have here, we can set the background color to this value here so that it is blending in with the nav bar itself. So if I click on this, the middle disappears, but the other two stays. And with the other two, what we can do is set the burger menu after.active. And what we can do is translate y to 0 rem, so it sends it back to where it originally was. We also want to rotate it by 45 degrees. See if that works. My bad, my syntax must be wrong. Yes, it is. So hopefully, yep, there we go. I just had to change that around. And then do the exact same thing, but for before. And instead of 45 degrees, we want to put a negative, so that goes the opposite direction. So now, when the burger menu is activated, we now have this cool little cross, which is pretty cool. To make it a bit cooler, what we can do is add some transitions. So for example, let's do transition 0.5 seconds for all. Save that, copy that, bring that into active, as well as the active of the after stroke and the before stroke. So now when we click on this, look how nice that looks, right? That's starting to look really, really good. And I might add some transitions to the before and after as well. So now it looks like this. Perfect. So once we've got our burger menu working, the next thing we want to do is to activate the nav bar so that it opens up to what we were working on before. So go back to your app.js, and we want to create a new cons called nav, and we want to link that to the nav. So document.query selector and have nav. And now with the burger trigger, we also want to activate that nav. So we want to toggle active in the class list for nav. So now if we click on here, so if we look over the nav here, as soon as we click on the burger menu, it should say active. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. That's starting to look really good. So we come to our styles, go back to our nav, which is here, and add in a class of active. Our new height will be 100 vertical height. So now we have this. The only issue now is that this is falling behind. So in order to fix that, we want to come back to our burger menu and we want to set the top to 2 rem. Actually, we might bring that back a bit, 2.5. That's 2.75. Let's see how that looks. About right. So now it stays in the one spot, but we also have the activation of the nav bar. Perfect. We also want to add in a transition, perhaps 0.5 seconds for all, and also another transition for the nav and active. So now when we click on it, it goes up and down just like that. Pretty cool, huh? So once you've done that, the final thing that we want to activate is the unordered list. So in order to do that, we want to create a new constant for list and direct it to what we had before. So UL. And with that list, we want to add a class list and toggle active as well. If I click on this, UL is now activated. Now if we go into styles, go down to our UL, which is here, add a transition of 0.5 seconds for all. And then we also want to add in the class list of active so that when it's toggled, this is activated. And what we can do now is add this transition, display visibility, and change it. So we can put in our initial, and we also want to set it to visible so that now when we click on it, hopefully we should now get our icons working. That is starting to look really, really nice. One thing that I should do is set the text align to center, just so it's all centered. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. So now if we go into the Figma, that looks pretty accurate to how I've portrayed it here. And that's pretty much the mobile response. So we've got some cool little animations here. Then we've got this nice little button animation, as well as a transformation of the social media links. Perfect. So once we've completed the mobile template, which is starting to look really nice, the next step we want to do is to work on the desktop one. So what we might do is expand this and we can start working on the desktop template. So to start working on that, we'll get back into our file here. Come down here. Okay, so what we want to do now is type in media screen and have a minimum, when it's a minimum width of 1150 pixels. What we want to do now is set the burger menu to none. So set the display to none. So hopefully that should work. Yep, that's working. So now if we extend it out, it disappears and comes back just like that. Fantastic. Then what we also want to do is remove the burger trigger. So go to burger trigger and set the display to none. So now the burger trigger is gone. And now with the UL, what we want to do is we want to set the display to its initial value. Set the visibility to visible, so now it can be seen. Set the display to flex, align items to center, justify content to center. We also want to set the flex direction to row. So now, hopefully, fantastic. So if we go into our Figma file over here, this is sort of what we want to achieve. So we'll start playing with that now. Okay, so I'll just grab this. So with the li, let's set padding to 0 and 2 rem so that they're spaced left and right. We also want to set the margin to 0. And we also want to set this font size to, so we come over here, font size should be 20 pixels, but since we're working on a desktop size, we will need to factor that in. So in order to do that, what we can do is create a calculation, paste that in, and we'll divide it by 1.25. See how that's looking. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. We also want to have a pointer as well, so that each time we are on a link, it points to it, just like that. So once we've done that, we'll go into the ally that I created as a button. So it should be under nav. Oh yeah, here. So ally.button, btn, and we want to set the padding to 1 rem, 4 rem, the margin to 0, 2 rem. We also want to set a transition to 0.25 seconds all, border, 1 pixel, solid, and we'll set the color to white. White. We want to set a border radius of 2 rem, so it's a full curve. That's looking really, really nice. And let's add some functionality. So ally.button, and then add in a colon, then hover. Set the background color to white. Set the fonts, the color of the font itself to, let's do a darker color, so the color of the nav. So now if we put the cursor on, we have this really cool hover animation, which is starting to look really cool. So once we've done that, the next step is to work on the section itself. So if we come over here, we have this section. So let's get working on that. So with the section, we want to change the background image that we had to a URL of a desktop. So this one here, the height to something like 45 rem. We also want to set the background position to center and the background size again to what we had before as cover. Let's see how that looks. Yep, that's starting to look really, really nice. It's similar to how this is looking here. Next step is with the form itself. We want to set the display to flex, line items to flex start, justify content to center. We also want to add the padding of 3 rem, 5 rem. So 3 top and bottom, 5 left and right. That's how it looks. Very nice. And then the next step that we want to work on is the title itself. So go h1.title, set the font size to, come over here. So this is 48 pixels. I'll just open this up again. Cal 48 pixels divided by 1.25. Then the next thing we want to do is set the p tags to have a look here, 24 pixels, 1.25. There's an issue here. Got a colon. See how that looks. Yep, that looks awesome. Really, really good. Then after that, we want to manipulate the input, the widths themselves. Let's set the width to, I don't know, 35 rem, something that's fixed. And let's set the font size to something like 24 pixels divided by 1.25, similar to before. That's starting to look really, really nice. I'm really happy with how that's turning out. And then with the placeholder itself, so if we go input, placeholder, set the font size to, that's the same value. So the input is sorted. So now if we type in here, yep, the same size. That's starting to look really nice. I'm back here, going to the text area. Set the width to 35 rem. See how that looks. Yep, that's starting to look really nice. And then we also want to play with the text area, the placeholder itself. So placeholder, and set that to being the font size for having a calculation of 24 pixels divided by 1.25, so similar to before. And then finally we have the button. So what we can do is set the button.btn to So the width being 35 frames, so it happens. Okay, so I have to change this to flex direction to column. All right, let's see what's going on here. For some reason this is happening. So let's have a look. Form contents, display, flex, align items. Oh, align item center, justify content center, flex direction. Oh, flex direction against column, flex start. Sorry, wrong one. Center, flex start. Ah, that's why. Okay, so we need to manipulate the form contents. So I'll actually bring this up a bit more so it's easier for you guys. I'll just refresh it and we'll just quickly fix that up. So let's go into, we'll start form contents and pretty much just change this or copy and paste this until that should work. Yeah, it's working very nicely. We also want to add in, so change the width to 35 rem and then just add an extra 2 rem. Yeah, that's looking really, really nice. Okay, that's nice and responsive. We can type our name in. And if you want to have an error message, so like a warning message, what you can do is go into your index.html, and for each input, you can put in required. So what this does is it comes up with a warning message to make sure that you've put in all the information that's been required of you. So if I save that, so if I try to submit, we'll come up with this error message. But if I start typing, we'll move on to the next one and so forth. And then the final thing that we need to do is just to work on the footer. It shouldn't take too long. So if we go back into our styles, go into footer, let's go display flex, align items center, justify content space. Let's do space between, set the width to 100%, flex direction to, let's do row, I guess. So let's see how that looks. Yep, that's starting to look quite nice. So within the footer, I wonder, it's because all the paddings have certain values. Okay, so let's set default padding of, I don't know, 3 rem perhaps. See how that looks. That looks good. Now if we go into our p.logo, so p.logo, change the padding to 0, margin as well to 0. See how that looks. Yep, that's looking good. We also have a terms and conditions, which I'll quickly change here. Terms, set the padding to 0, margin also to 0. See how that looks. Yep, that's nice and aligned. The icons themselves just need to be changed. So grab the icons. So let's go icons, padding 0, margin 0. See how that looks. Okay, that's starting to look good. Instead of 100%, let's change it to 100 vertical width. Okay, let's figure out why that is happening. It's because I've added in a padding. Let's get rid of the padding. All right, so now it's back to where we need it. What we want to do now is add a padding for the top. Let's do, I don't know, 4 rem, 0 for the sides. And then for each side, we'll bring it in slightly closer. So for the logo, let's do 0 for the top, the right, bottom, and also let's do something like 3 rem, I guess, maybe 4 actually. So that should bring it in like that. That's looking good. And then we'll also use this for the icons. So let's do something like 0 for the top, 4 for the right, 0, 0 for the bottom and the left. So we save that. That's how it looks. Awesome. That's starting to look really, really nice. And what we can do as well is with the form contents, we can put in the center if we want. So For example, we could go like height 45 rem or like 30 rem or something. 40 rem perhaps, 35 rem. Oh, height 35 rem. So that's what it looks like. We bring it in, it's responsive. Get these nice animations. Open it again. That's how it looks. What we might do is actually do that right now. So change the height to 35 rem for the form contents. So 35 rem. Perfect. So now it looks like this. It's responsive. We have these nice animations. Social media links as well. And another cool thing is it's responsive, just kind of nice. And the burger menu works. Perfect. And one last thing that we can actually add if you want is we can set the overflow in the X direction to hidden so that it's just one big scroll and it's a lot cleaner to work with. And that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please let me know in the comments. And if you do have any questions, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out. And I will catch you in the next video. See you later.